This is the 46 of 46 podcast summit session, where we'll talk all things Adirondack, backcountry, and beyond. From high peak stories and adventures to trail tips and tricks, we'll dive deep into the heart of these mountains and the people who passionately climb them. Adirondack maps and spruce traps to bushwhacks and backpacks. It's all here on the 46 of 46 summit sessions. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the 46 of 46 podcast. Summer is in full swing up here in the ADK, so if you haven't made it up yet, now is the time to change all of your plans and get yourself up to the park. The sun is out, the grass is green, the mountains are dry, and it's time for summer adventure. This week, I'm bringing back a guest who's been on the podcast before. Yes, I'm here with a summit session once again, and this is going to be an adventure story. She's the youngest person to ever be on this podcast, and she's back again. And she's also the youngest person to ever do the Lake Placid 9er Ultra, which is why she was on the podcast the first time. And she is an absolute beast on the trail. She is now 16 years old. She was 13 when she did the Lake Placid 9er Ultra, which is absolutely mind-boggling. But her and her dad are always up here in the ADK, and they're doing massive days in the mountains. And she's here today to tell us all about their recent Cranberry Lake 50 Ultra. Yes, 50 miles. It's actually like 52 miles, one day, one big day walking around Cranberry Lake. Her name is Eleena. She's here. Eleena, welcome back to the 46 of 46 podcast. It's great to have you back.
Thank you so much for having me again.
Absolutely.
I feel like I'm official now because I've been on here twice.
Twice, yes. I appreciate you coming back. And when I heard that you were doing this hike, I was like, oh, I'm definitely going to have to ask her to come back, because I've never done an episode about the Cranberry Lake 50 because I've never been on it. I've never set foot on the trail. And I've had plenty of people ask me about doing an episode, and I've been, it's been on my list for a long time. So I was like, oh, this will be a perfect situation. And after your, when you guys posted that you did the Cranberry Lake 50, and I reached out like that day, I even worded it, I remember in the messages to you, when you're ready to talk about it, let me know, because I could tell from the posts that you guys put up that I think you guys quoted, I think your dad on his post quoted Eric Schlimmer that said it was doing the
excessive.
Excessive.
Yeah.
That's what Eric Schlimmer said. It was excessive. And you guys were like, yes, it is indeed it was excessive. So anyways, before we get into that, what other things have you guys been doing lately? You're always up here hiking. What are some recent hikes that you guys have done, you and your dad?
Okay. So since the last time I was on the podcast, which was in 2021, I was 13. That same year, I did the Great Range Traverse for the very first time, which, looking back, that's like not even in the same ballpark of what I've been doing.
Yeah. Then
I did the Devil's Path and the Pemi Loop, the extended Pemi, the next year, followed by I became a Winter 46er in 2023. And then that same year, I did the Bob Marshall Traverse, which was like my peak of what I'd ever done, and still kind of is even after this, because after doing the Bob Marshall in September of last year and then doing this, I'd say that they're kind of around the same, but I would love to do the Bob way more than this.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Now, for people who don't know, tell us what the Bob Marshall Traverse is.
Okay, the Bob Marshall Traverse is it's kind of infamous for me. I don't know, I kind of put it in its own little category because I built it up so much for myself, but it's big slide, and then basically the entire Great Range with Lower Wolfjaw, Upper Wolfjaw, Armstrong, Gothic, Saddleback, Basin, Haystack, Marcy, then Skylight, Iroquois, Algonquin Right, and then Mount Joe. And I trained so much for that, and it was probably one of my favorite days ever in the mountains. It was actually just I would do it 100 times if I could.
That is excessive. They're all excessive. And it takes a certain type of person who wants to do these massive, or we'll call them excessive, days in the mountains. And it is type 2 fun. That is for sure. It is a grind fest, but it's a willing grind fest. And again, you're only 16 years old now. The fact that you're doing this at such a young age is mind boggling to me. It's absolutely mind boggling. Absolutely impressive stuff. But yeah, you've been doing so many monster hikes. And is this because you have these, these desires to push yourself to your limits, or are these just like, why not? Like, where do you fall in that category?
Okay, I'd say I'd fall like somewhere in the middle because I it really does like I hiking like especially like the monster days like it gives me something to like work for just like throughout like every day even like because I'm only doing like a couple per year. So it's like one in the winter, one in the summer, maybe. Then it's like in between that time, it's like something I'm working for months. So it's, I don't know. And then, but at the same time, I'm like, why not?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I might as well. I'm like, I'm young and I have like all this, like, have the potential. I could basically do whatever I want if I really try to do it for like a month or so to train. I can do whatever hike I want to do. So I'm going to do it.
That's a great place to be. It's also a great mindset to set yourself up for the rest of your life because you're already building momentum and, belief in yourself right now at a young age at what you're capable of and what you're able to do. And that's only going to snowball as you get older and older. And the confidence level that you have, you're building it from a young age. So I commend you and I applaud you for that. I applaud your father for, taking you on these adventures. And I mean, it must be absolutely amazing. I have 3 daughters myself. For him to do these adventures with you must be an absolutely incredible treat. But that's fantastic. And so when you're training for these events, so yeah, it makes sense. Like you're doing 1 or 2 big, massive hikes a year. You talked about training for them. What do you do specifically to prepare yourself for these big hikes? And do you play sports at all, or is like hiking the thing?
I I don't personally play any sports. I more just try and like stay active like in my day-to-day life cuz I mean I would do sports but they take up like a couple months like per out of the year that I could be hiking like and I don't know, it's just not worth it. I prefer to hike anyway. But for me personally, I do a lot of running and trail running and like just like I don't do much like exercise besides that. Like I could do more like body weight or I don't know, like weightlifting. But for me personally, running is like how I train a lot, like just long distance.
Mm-hmm. Great, great. So when you're preparing or picking and choosing what big massive hike to do next, how do you guys figure out what you're going to do? And another question, this would be better for your dad, but do you pick them and then he's like, all right, here we go, or do you kind of both pick them together?
Okay, well, we kind of like to do it like together. We'll both like ask each other like what we want to do, like I don't know. But for certain ones like the Bob, like he wasn't even considering that and then like I'll cut like in like April or something, I was like I want to do the Bob this year and then he was like exactly, he was like ugh, like he actually did
Yeah.
not think we could do it. Like it took like a lot of convincing, like I had to basically prove that I was like mentally and physically ready to do something like that. And it was the same kind of for the 50. Like neither of us really wanted to do the 50. Like at the end of the day, we were procrastinating it. We were going to do it last year and then we didn't. But like once like we both knew that like we could finish just based on where we were, then it was like we're just going to do it. We both like,
Mm-hmm.
you decide unanimously.
So I hear that a lot from people that about the Cranberry Lake 50. That's because it's a part of this Northeast Ultra 8 list that's why people do it. But nobody actually just wakes up and says, let's go do the Cranberry Lake 50 Ultra in one day. Let's just do that. Like nobody wants to do that. It's a different type of person who's going after this list or these like gigantic, massive days. But I never hear anyone be like, oh man, that was the best hike of my life. It's always just like, yep, did it. Cool. Not much to talk about. Let's move on. That seems to be always what the case is. Do you know off the top of your head what the mileage and elevation is for the Bob Marshall Traverse that you did?
Yeah, I think in terms of mileage, I think it's around 33 to 34 miles. And then for elevation, it was like 15,000 feet of gain.
Jeez Louise. That is a day. Man, that is a
Yeah.
day. Yeah, that is a day. All right. It's a cool hike though. When you like actually look at it on the map and where it's going, it's like, oh, it's just, I mean, it makes perfect sense. And I love that it ends with Mount Joe. What was that like as you were climbing Mount Joe at the end? Was it one of those
Oh,
things where it's like, did Mount Joe feel like Mount Marcy, or did you not even notice it at that point because you had the high where you're almost done, or did it feel like this is the biggest mountain in the history of the world?
okay, so when we were doing Mount Joe, okay, I kind of like timed like my mentalness, I don't know, my mentality like wrong because when we were on right felt like the end. Like
Sure.
I like so because like the sun was setting, so I like ran like I wanted right to be in the light. I didn't want to do it in the dark. So I like ran up there and I was like, I'm done. Like now I just have to walk back to the car. And then when I got back to the car, it felt like I had just done this giant thing, and then we still had to do Mount Joe. I was like fuming on the inside. I was like, obviously, I'm gonna do it. Like, it's not like I physically can't do it. Like, I made it this far. I'm not gonna just quit without doing Mount Joe. But oh, it was rough. I was actually like, who decided to put this at the end?
Yeah.
I was like,
It's,
whoever put this on the end, I
now,
can't.
when you were hiking it, was it, so physically you were fine as you were going up, and it was more of just kind of a mental pain because you just were like ready to be done.
Yeah, it just felt like, oh, like all the other mountains we had done were like high peaks, so like, and they were part of the traverse, and then this one was just like, just got to do like a 1 mile out and back for
Yeah.
what reason? I don't
Yeah.
know.
No, I totally get it. And it's also Mount Joe. It's like it's still I think I don't know what the elevation gain of Mount Joe is, but yeah, it's a mile trip out and back. So it's like at that point, I could imagine it being absolutely not on your to-do list in terms of what you'd like to do. But cool. Well, fantastic. You're doing some awesome stuff. Again, I'm very impressed by you. What you guys are doing, you and your dad, and you in particular is like you're such a young person doing absolutely monster things in the mountains. It's exciting to watch, and let's get into this Cranberry Lake 50 now because that's what we're here to talk about. Where do you rank the Cranberry Lake 50 on your list of these big days that you've done so far? I have an idea where it's probably going to rank, but where do you rank it?
Okay, so it's probably like close to last, but it's not like I genuinely did like looking back on it, it wasn't like the most fun thing I could have done, but I do like the fact that I love to push myself in that way. I loved the fact that this was like one of the only things that ever pushed me in that way to that like limit that I'd never done before. So like in that sense, it's like one of my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
But I would never do it again, so it's probably like last
Well,
place.
they all say they would never do it again. I mean, how many times have all of us, both you and I, or the people listening to this podcast, climbed a mountain and said, "Ugh, I'll never go up this mountain again. This mountain sucks." And then a month goes by, you're like, "Yeah, I'll go up there again. I'll do that again. That's fine." You forget the
Yeah.
pain, and you're just like, someone talks to you, and you're like, "All right, I'll go again. Let's go do it again." But that's cool. Now, let me ask you, what about you, or what about your life has made you want, be this type of person that, as you said, will push yourself to the limit? Because I can assure you, when I was 16 years old, that was not on my radar at all. And I can assure you, pretty much every 16-year-old I've ever met here in my adult life is also not pushing themselves to the limit, as you say. It's a very wise mentality you have. So why do you think you have that kind of built into you?
I'm not really sure in terms of like why I feel the need to like do all this stuff. I just feel like if I don't, then I'm like wasting like what I could be doing. And like I could do other things, like I could do other sports, but they're not gonna like they're not gonna be the same. Like they're not gonna like push me in a way that I want to be pushed. So like I don't know why. I feel like I probably got it some from like my dad because he's kind of like the same way. But at the same time, like my dad only does this stuff because I want to. So he does like it. He does like it the same way I do, but like he would never start it if I didn't want to. So
Sure, he gets roped into these massive adventures, and yeah, obviously they're the types of stories that, yes, again, in the moment it's hard, but the stories that you tell when you're done, I mean, you'll be telling the stories for the rest of your life. So you have that
yeah.
going for you. So very cool, very cool. Well, let's talk about the Cranberry Lake 50 then. So you said that you had to push yourself in a way that you haven't before. So Cranberry Lake 50, it's like 4,000 feet of elevation gain, 52 miles. So you said the Bob alone was 15,000 and I think like 35 miles. So obviously mileage, it's drastically bigger or drastically longer, but elevation is different. But also climbing the mountains, it's different because it's, mountain, 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 mountain. Whereas the Cranberry Lake 50, and if you're not familiar, the Cranberry Lake 50, it's a trail around Cranberry Lake, and it goes around the lake. So you're not going on top of mountains. You're literally walking around a trail you're walking on a trail that goes around the lake. Now, would you say that what made it more difficult was the fact that it maybe like it was more of a mental challenge because of the fact that you're not going on a mountain, getting that little high, going to the next one, getting that little high, or the monotony of it all? Or was it different that made it exceedingly difficult for you compared to the others?
Yeah. Me and my dad were talking about this like right after the hike, was that, or like basically throughout the entire thing, is that when you're doing a hike like the Bob, you're summiting so many peaks, is that like you're going to keep going to get to the next mountain that's only like 20 minutes away, 30 minutes away. It's only like a mile or so between each peak. And this was like directly opposite. It's like so much more of a mental battle to get through. Like every step feels exactly the same and every step hurts, so that you literally have no choice but to keep going because you're 26 miles one way, 26 miles the other way. Like you're stranded and there's not a peak anywhere. So it's like, that was the hardest part. Like I'd never done anything that wasn't like mountains involved in a way. So it was like something to look forward to. There was nothing to look forward to. There was no goal that you were going to reach. It's just, the goal is the end, 50 miles.
It was just a straight suffer fest from the first step. Did you guys bring, I guess there's lean-tos on it. Did you have stuff in case you decided, no, I'm not going? Like, did you bring a tent with you, or what did you guys bring with you?
We didn't bring a tent or anything. I think my dad keeps like a bivy sack or something in his backpack. I'm not sure if he had it that day. I didn't ask him, but we had no intention of using them. Like, neither of us are people who are just gonna like sit, unless one of us was really hurt. We were not stopping for longer than like a couple minutes. Like, I don't even know. Like,
sure.
We definitely started that hike with like the mentality of like, we're finishing today, but we're not coming back. Like, I'm not coming back to do this ever. Like, get it done today.
Yeah, got it. So as soon as you stepped on the trail, you knew there is only one way out, and it's going around this lake. With that said, what was kind of going through your head as you started? Because, starting something like, I mean, I've never done something this big. And quite frankly, I would be shocked if I ever do. What's going through your head as you start a 50-mile hike that, as you said, and you already knew, doesn't really have that mental payoff? So, obviously, like we're having fun when we first start something, but when you know what's coming today without that sort of, constant dopamine hit that you'll get when you're hiking mountain after mountain, what was going through your head at the start of the trail?
I was really nervous, but like, I guess I wasn't that nervous. I just knew that like, this is what we're doing. So I was just trying to mentally prepare myself to just like keep looking, like just to never stop moving, basically. Like, I was just trying to like the whole night before and like the whole morning, I was just like, this is going to be hard. And like, I never expected anything less. Like, if anything, I expected it to be harder, so that like when I like was super hard, I wasn't surprised. I wasn't like, I don't know, I wasn't like disappointed or anything. I was just, this is what I knew it was going to be. Like, what else did you think was going to happen?
Yeah, makes perfect sense. It's a long day. So all right, let's get into it. So take us through we'll start at the beginning of the trail. What direction did you hike? And then just start taking us through it, kind of piece by piece, and we'll just circle around the lake, and any story that comes to mind as we're going around the lake, feel free to tell us. But yeah, tell us the adventure story. Take us with you.
Okay, so we went counterclockwise, which was a little bit of a surprise for me. For some reason, I thought we were going Wait, no. See, this was the problem.
Mhm.
We went clockwise.
Okay.
And I kept getting confused because I thought we were going counterclockwise, basically leading up to the entire thing. And then on the day of it, he was like, "Oh, we're gonna go across the bridge first," which is there's this bridge at the beginning. You go over like the little dam or whatever.
Okay. Yep.
But we did end up going clockwise.
Okay.
And it was about 2:45 in the morning when we started, and it was raining. It was sprinkling-ish, and the bugs were out. So like it wasn't the best scenario that
Yeah.
I would have wanted to start it in, especially knowing that like this trail was like known for being wet and like boggy, like especially towards the end. And I was like, it's already raining. Like this is not a great start.
It's like when you look at this trail on a map, or you just think about it, you just assume it's going to be raining. Like nobody's ever hiked this on a beautiful sunny bluebird day. It's just it's kind of like Allen Mountain. You just assume it's going to be pouring rain when you're there, whether that's the case or not. But in your head, as you think about that hike, you just kind of assume, you always picture yourself hiking it in the rain. Now, what was the reason for the last second switch, or was it just in terms of direction, or did you guys just not necessarily talk about it and that's just what you decided on at the moment? Or was there a
No,
logistical
yeah.
reason?
We never actually like talked about which way we were going because I don't know, it just never came up. And
Sure.
I just kind of assumed, like I was just assuming because of the all trails direction goes counterclockwise. So then I did ask him like the night before, I was like, "Oh, which way are we going?" And he just assumed that we were going counterclockwise because clockwise because that's what like all of the big people do, I guess. Like all of the other people that he saw do it did it clockwise.
All
And
right.
I was like, okay, it doesn't make a difference at the end of the day for me, like which direction we go. So
All right, makes sense. And as I look at the elevation gain and whatnot, at least from that perspective, it doesn't seem like one way would necessarily be much better than the other. Kind of just
yeah, no.
generally different. And again, it's like 4,000 feet of gain over 52 miles. 52 miles in one day. But there's plenty of people that are probably listening to this podcast are like, yeah, James, dude, 52 miles. Why are you so weak? Why don't you just do these things like all these people that do? And it's like, dude, you guys are more hardcore than I. You are way more hardcore than I. But anyways, continue. All right. So you started the trail. It's like 2:15 in the morning. It's raining. You're already wet. Did you drive up from Western New York and then just start hiking, or were you already up here?
No, we drove up the night before and then we like slept like right like in this like little parking lot off the side of the road, not by the trailhead. There's like a one that's kind of close to the trail. It's called like the Pavine Swamp Trailhead, and there were no cars there, so we just like slept for like a couple hours, like maybe
Okay.
four,
Got it.
before heading to the trailhead at like 2 o'clock in the morning.
All right. All right. So 2 o'clock in the morning, you guys start hiking. You go over a bridge. And here in the Five Ponds Wilderness, which is also Adirondack Bigfoot country. So you probably ran into a couple Bigfoot back there, I have to assume, in the Five Ponds Wilderness.
Mhm.
But all right, continue. Take us through the trip.
Okay, so it was like sprinkling, raining, and first you have to walk like on the road to get to the ranger school. So we did that, and honestly, it was kind of creepy. It was like, you're just starting, and then it's like a deserted like town that you're like walking through, and it's like a school, whatever. But we kept going, and it was the thing about like the first section, the first at least like 10 miles were all in the dark. It was like 3-ish hours. I don't know, something like that. Yeah, like 3 hours in the dark. And there were a lot. This was like the only time it was like this, but that entire section had like a ton of wooden boards that were like covered with like slick like slime. Like Allen slime, I would say, but like worse. Like I don't even care about Allen slime at this point. Allen slime is just like whatever. But this was like I'd step onto a board and I like fell. Like I would like hit the ground like hard, and it's like dark out.
Mm-hmm.
I actually can't. It was actually like that was probably the worst part about that section was like all of the like little bridges you had to go across that were like you had to go so slow till you didn't fall. You had to like do like tiptoeing across these like wooden boards. And then it was all pretty much the same. It was like just dark like woods it slowly started like not raining anymore by the time we got to the road walk about 10-ish miles in.
All right. So that road walk, as I'm looking at the map here, so that you get on Route 3 as you're at kind of the northwest tip of the lake. All right. So you're on Route 3, State Route 3, and looks like the road walk is probably, how long is that roughly?
I think it was about a mile.
Yeah, it looks like it's slightly more than a mile, but yeah. All right, cool. So you have a road walk there at that point. So that first section, I would imagine in your mind that was like, okay, section 1 complete. We've made it from the trailhead to the road walk. And then after you hit the road, you're going back into no man's land. So how are you guys feeling as you got to the road at that point?
I felt super good when we got to the road. It kind of felt like the time went by super quickly. Like I had just kind of like sped through that whole first section. It didn't really feel like that much time had gone by. And then I was like, oh, that was already 10 miles. Like that's like a whole fifth of the whole trail. Like It felt super good to just like have that like off your plate. Now you only have like the rest 4/5 of the way to go.
Only 40 miles to go. No big deal. We only got 40 more miles to go. Piece of cake.
Yeah.
Be done
the
by
sun
lunch.
was just coming. Yeah. The sun was just coming up at that point. So I felt like good that we had gotten so like kind of far by the time we had gotten to the road. That was my like mental goal. Yeah.
And that's why I always joke on the podcast. I always say the miles in the dark don't count, because when you hike in the dark and then the sun comes up, you just get this mental boost. Like you're starting over once the sun comes up. Like you forget about all those miles you just did in the dark. And it's like, oh, wow, you're already 10 miles in. But once the sun comes up, it just mentally feels like you're starting over. It's a new day. That's why I always joke about that. But it's real. It makes a huge difference in terms of the mental boost once that sun comes up and the day begins. The day really begins. But all right, continue. Cranberry Lake Wild Forest. Let's go.
Yeah. So the road walk, it was fine. It was kind of boring, but it was kind of like eerie. The whole place kind of felt deserted at that hour. I don't know what time it was. I think it was like 5 o'clock, maybe 6:30 ish. I don't actually remember. Yeah, 6 o'clock in the morning. And that was like the point where I actually like ate something. I hadn't really we hadn't stopped to like, I had a bladder, so I was obviously drinking, but like we hadn't stopped to like get any like snacks up to that point. So I just ate as I walked along the road, and it worked out. Then we had to go back into the woods. The bugs were like definitely coming out at that point because the sun had come up, and it was like, that began like the whole rest of the day was basically just slowly the bugs were getting worse and worse as the miles went on, which didn't really help with the fact that you're also growing in pain as the day goes on. So, and you're slowly going insane as the day goes on. So
sounds like a winning combination. If you ask,
I know, it's just, what else do you want?
Also, I didn't even say at the beginning. I don't know why I didn't say this at the beginning. What was the date that you guys did this?
Hang on. I don't really know.
Because the bugs, it's like it was in May, if I recall. But the bugs
like May
were
18th,
May 18th. Okay. Because the bugs, like normally May is like the great month where there's no bugs. But this year, because of our weird winter, the bugs were always like a month ahead of the schedule. So they've been brutal from much earlier into the season than normal. So it's not surprising that they were also brutal during your hike here. But all right, cool. Continue.
Yeah. So then we started like, I don't know, whatever this next section is. They're all the sections kind of felt the same, but at that point, after that point, when they were all like, there's nothing to look forward to, it all looks the same. If you want a spoiler, it's 50 miles of the same thing over and over again. So that like the next 10 miles, I'd say, maybe even just like, yeah, the next 10 miles were pretty good. Like physically, mentally, like I was cruising along, like I went pretty fast. I was kind of debating during that next section whether or not I should like push myself because I feel good, or like save my strength for the end, because I know that it's going to be rough like when I get to the like 50-mile mark. But at that point, I just kind of decided to push it as fast as I could to like make good time at the beginning. So in case I needed to slow down or like in case I needed more time later because I was in so much pain, that I could do that because I made good time in the morning when I
Sure.
felt good.
Seems like a winning strategy, certainly.
Yeah.
Pump out the miles while your body's fresh and get as far as you can. Because you know you're going to be in pain regardless. Like you're going to be
Yeah, either way.
suffering. So why not utilize the freshness to pump out as many miles as you possibly can?
Yeah. And I think in that next section that like somewhere along mile 16 or 17-ish was a whole giant uh plank bridge that was underwater. So you like walk up, you turn the bend, and then all you see is it's just a giant swamp basically. Everywhere, all the way to your left, all the way to your right, it's just underwater, about 3 inches at least on top of it. And so I wasn't gonna take. I don't know. Looking back, if I should have taken off my shoes or not, because I kind of thought that there was gonna be a lot of this during that day, and I wasn't gonna waste time like taking off my shoes and then switching socks or whatever. I was just gonna see how much of that was gonna happen before I wasted time. So I just like went through the whole section. I'd say it was probably about like 50 yards at least of these just like trudging through the water. And it was rough at that point because it felt so early into the hike that I was getting completely soaked, but it was fine. And my shoes dried out pretty quickly. So
Mm-hmm. What do you
the
wear when you're
aftermath,
hiking as far as your shoes go?
I don't know the exact name of them, but they're Solomons, they're trail runners.
Trail runners. Got
And
it.
I think, I don't know. I've had the same ones. I keep getting the next, like, I've had the same ones basically since I've been hiking. I just keep getting
Sure.
the next upgrade of
The
them
next
every
size.
single year,
Okay. Sure.
basically.
Great.
I should know the name, but I don't know it.
Just curious. You know, some people like boots, some people like trail runners. And for
Yeah.
the wet terrain, they both have their pros and their cons.
Yeah, but they dried out pretty quickly after they felt like they did at least. And looking back on it, I probably should have changed my socks right then because it was, I don't know, it didn't feel that bad in the moment because I just kind of powered through it. But then after the hike, I don't know, I kind of realized that I probably should have, I brought socks and then I just didn't use them because I was stubborn about that. But
Well,
it
also
was
too,
fine.
if you only have one pair of socks, which I'm assuming maybe you had one pair to change, it's like you're nervous to change them because it's almost like it almost feels better to have wet socks on your feet, knowing, well, I got those dry ones in my backpack, but if I put those
Exactly.
on, now I don't have that I don't have that cushion in the backpack there, you know, so I totally get that. I can tell you myself how many times I've hiked pretty much the entire day in the same socks and same shirt when it's soaking wet because I just don't quite know if I'm going to need to change it later. And then you get to the point where it's like, oh, well, I made it all the way across. I made it all the way back. So I guess I don't need to change. I could have changed it forever ago, but there's just something about knowing it's in your pack and you can get dry, but you have that option. Having that option. It's all about that option. But all right, continue.
Yeah, exactly. And I didn't know like if there were going to be more of these sections like right around the corner. So if I was going to change my socks and then 20 seconds later have to get them wet, that was not going to be fun for me.
Yeah,
So
it'd be
there was no
devastating.
way.
The very
Yeah,
first
I
time
actually
the very first time I hiked on the Lake Arnold Trail, the very first time I ever went through the floating logs, I made that mistake. So I changed like the first little stretch of it. I was like, oh, I dunked my foot and I changed my socks. And then you go around one little bend and it was the same thing. And then I drenched both of them. And it's like, why did I do that? Why didn't I wait? So I've made that mistake myself. And that's where I learned that it just feels so much better to just wait and wait and wait and wait and wait till you know, but you never really know. You never really know that it's going to be dry from here
no.
on out at all, especially on a trail like this, the Cranberry Lake 50, where it's notoriously wet. You never really know.
Yeah, exactly.
So how far into the trail would
So
you say you are right now in terms of mileage, would you say?
I would say we were at least like 17 miles in. We were creeping up on 20, which is where 20 miles is where we had our first like real stop.
Okay.
We like stopped, had like, I don't know, we didn't, we didn't change our socks at that point, I know, which was my mistake. Was like we stopped, but then I like had to use the bathroom, I had to eat something, and it just felt like we were there for a really long time. And we didn't like your legs start cramping up and the bugs are out and they suck. So we just wanted to keep going.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Yeah.
And there's a number of lean-tos along this trail, correct? Or is there just a few lean-tos? I know people backpack this trail, and I know there's lean-tos. Are there a lot of just a few? What was that like?
For at least I only noticed like a couple. I only noticed at least like there was one I know that we stopped at, maybe one that I walked past, but I think all of them are like a couple, like at least off the trail a bit.
Okay, sure.
There's only like a couple that are on the trail exactly. And they're not exactly great places to camp. At least like they're not great places to stop in general because they're kind of just like swarmed by bugs.
Yeah.
But yeah, there were a couple. I expected there to be more, honestly.
Are you dreaming of summiting the Adirondack high peaks, but you worry your fitness level might not be up to the challenge? Well, you are not alone. I have been there before. I know what it's like to turn around climbing a high peak. I once turned around on Big Slide, but then I've also hiked the Great Range Traverse, so things can change. And I know many people dream of climbing high peaks, but they face the roadblock of not feeling physically prepared for the challenge. That, my friends, is where Great Range Athlete Training Programs step in. Great Range Athlete Training Programs are your guide to getting trail ready. Yes, these programs are strategically designed to get you in mountain shape by focusing on the very muscles and endurance you'll need when you're on the trails. Hiking's a lot more fun when you're physically prepared for the climb, am I right? With Great Range Athlete Training Programs, you'll engage in strength training that targets crucial hiking muscles and complete trail-specific conditioning routines that mirrors the cardiovascular demands of climbing mountains. You know, your training should reflect your goals. So if your goals are to climb mountains, well, now you have training programs to get you there. And I'm not just getting you to the summit. No, I want you to enjoy every single step of the journey up and down. And then when you get back to the trailhead, I don't want you asking for your car or wondering when you're going to go get your Stewart's milkshake. No, I want you wondering what's next because you got down ready for more. So don't let fitness fears keep you from the trails. Not anymore. With Great Range Athlete Training Programs, you'll transform those concerns into confidence. You'll be more than just prepared, but you will be ready for the adventure, ready for the challenges of the high peaks, and ready to experience the magic of the Adirondack Mountains firsthand. So go visit 46outdoors.com to start your Great Range Athlete journey so you can arrive at the trailhead with complete confidence that you'll not only make it to the summits, but you'll make it back and you'll do it with ease. Head over to 46outdoors.com and choose your program now.
All right, so you're about 20 miles in. You guys just stopped for your first like real snack break. The bugs are swarming. You didn't change your socks, so your feet are still wet. All right. Keep it going. What are you feeling at this point too, as you made that stop? Like, how are you feeling about the trail? How are you feeling about the decision to do this hike? And then what you still have to come?
Okay. I think it was like, this was like, the next section was like where like everything started to change. Cause at that 20-mile mark, I was feeling like really good. I was like, I can't like, it had been like 6 hours since we started. I already done 20 miles. Like that never happens in the high peaks.
Sure.
Like when you're doing mountains, you never like cover that many miles. And like, I don't know, at least I don't, cause I'm not like FKT or whatever. And also like, I was having like a good time. Like I wasn't like struggling that much. It wasn't like struggle bus. I don't know. It felt good. Like my body felt good. My mind felt good. And the trail was like fun. Besides like the couple like wet spots, it was like genuinely like not that bad to be out there at that point.
Mm-hmm. Good. So that's good. So morale is high right now at this point.
It was, but like, so then the next like 6 miles, like mile 20 to 26, it was where it started to like, we're only halfway sat in, like, okay. I was developing hot spots, like, yeah, I was developing hot spots like all over my feet. And so I knew we were going to have to stop like pretty soon, like not like 10 miles after that, but like kind of like in the middle somewhere. And at that point I was like, how are we only like halfway? Like mile 26 we stopped, and I was like, we need to stop because my feet hurt really bad, and this is like not a good thing to be happening, like you're not even halfway yet. So we stopped, and we both had like blisters all over our feet. We both had like blisters on our heels, on our toes. It was a mess. And I was like, this is not good. Like we were like sitting in like a little creek because we had both run out of water, and the bugs were like absolutely horrendous, like swarming, like in your ears, your nose, your literal, like you can't eat anything. You open your mouth to eat something and the bugs fly in. It was like, I like took care of all my blisters, but it like started to like set in that like now I have to do the entire second half like with these like painful like bricks of feet that hurt every single time you walk. Which like it didn't feel like they hurt that bad until I changed like my socks, because I was just kind of like mentally setting it aside. And then once I like took care of it, it was like the only thing I could focus on was how bad my feet hurt. So I tried to like not think about it that much. But
what was I know you said earlier it stopped raining. Did it stay not raining, or did it rain a little bit more throughout the day?
No, once the sun had come up, like it had stopped raining, but then throughout the day, it actually got pretty hot. Like it was sunny. It was really nice. Like,
okay, got it. So it was a nice day out there. Okay. That's good. That's good.
Yeah, it started off not too promising, but then it got better and better as
fantastic.
They went on, so.
That definitely helps the situation, helps the morale. Now, did you guys have bug nets on and like long sleeves, or were you in t-shirt, shorts, and no bug net, getting just obliterated?
Yeah, we wore long sleeves pretty much the entire day. I didn't take off my sun hoodie that I had on, that I put on at the beginning. I didn't take it off all the way until the end. And we did have bug nets, but I'm kind of like a stickler for using them because I hate using bug nets, but I did have to use it for a while there because I just don't like how it makes everything dark, and then I feel like I can't see the trail.
Sure.
I don't know. I did have to use it though.
Yeah. So that gives the listeners an idea as to just how brutal the bugs were that you decided to put it, that it was better to just put it on. Sounds awful. Sounds awful.
Yeah.
All right. So you're halfway through the trail. The bugs are relentless. You and Dad both have blisters all over your feet. You changed your socks. You took care of the blisters, but now you're ready to chop your feet off. Chop your feet off of your legs and become a peg-legged woman for the rest of your life. Now you have the other half of the trail left to go. Go.
Okay, so at that point, it started becoming like Swamp City, basically. Like so many swamps. Like at that point in the trail, all the way in the back where it like sticks out. You can tell on the map what I'm talking about, but like it goes like completely away from the lake. That's kind of like that tip is kind of around the halfway point, but there's like a ton of lakes and like swamps back there that really did not help like anything because the trail was flooded, and so then there were herd paths going all around, like we're around these like flooded trails, and it was we genuinely we had to do a little bit of bushwhacking at that point because like it was not maintained in that back section. It was like the last thing that I wanted to be doing, like in the middle of a 50 miler. I wanted to just go fast and try and get it like as much miles as I can as soon as possible, but it was relentless.
And at that point too, I'm just looking at the map right now. At that point too, being halfway and, being like nervous, where is the trail, having to bushwhack, adding time and adding any sort of steps that you don't know if it's correct. I mean, talk about adding anxiety to a day that's already filled with anxiety in terms of the mileage and how far you're going. So, it's like if you're trying to find the trail, you can't find it, and then you mess around for an extra quarter mile. It's like, oh man, I just added an extra quarter mile and 20 minutes to this already gargantuan of a day. So it becomes a lot more impactful in a negative way at that point. But it's not surprising too that the trail is, needs a little TLC because this is a trail that is out there. So definitely not getting quite the attention as, like a trail in the high peaks would get. It's kind of like parts of the
Yeah.
Northville Placid Trail that are so far out there. They're just away from nothing. And man, does that trail need some work at that, these different sections, but it's like, it's so far in here. So it's no wonder that they don't get the love and attention that they need. And that's why they kind of get run down, but not surprising. And then the beavers take over, and then the beavers just do what beavers do and make everything more difficult. But all right, cool. So continue. You're over the halfway point, continuing on.
Yeah. Along those same lines, there was, I don't know around which mile it was. It had to have been around a mile, like at least mile 30. There was this intersection that involved, every single intersection on this trail in general was very well marked up until that point. You could tell like there was tons of just 50 trail markers. They had the 50 on them. You knew exactly which way to go. This did not have that. This one intersection just had an arrow pointing in one direction, and it was the wrong direction.
Oh.
And at that point, we were I was zoned out. I just following whatever seems obvious to go. Cause at this point, I don't know, we're so far in there. I'm like, if this is the trail, then I'm going to go this way. So we had to have gone about at least a quarter mile, at least maybe 0.4 down this trail. And we would have kept going if we didn't run into this giant waterfall. There was this huge waterfall, and we both stopped at it, and we were like, why has no one said anything about this waterfall that on this trail? It's so random. It's out of nowhere, this huge. And we're like, okay, this is a bit weird. Why? Whatever. And then I kept hiking, and my dad is like, oh, I'm going to check where this is on the map because we didn't know about this waterfall, whatever. And then he realized that we're at least, it's a shortcut trail, basically.
Okay.
So we would have gone back to the 50 eventually, but we would have cut off miles, and then it wouldn't have been official, I guess.
Okay, sure. No, it makes sense. You want to do it for what it is.
Yeah. And so he starts calling me that we have to go back. And at that point I was so irritated that we had gone all the way down this trail. I was like, this is already a 52-mile day, and we just added half a mile, 0.7 onto this day. I actually cannot believe this. It was probably the most irritating thing that happened because it didn't make a difference, but it had to have been at least 30 minutes that we were trying to figure out it, I don't know, 30 minutes.
I would say it makes
time wasted, basically.
Absolutely. I would say it makes a huge difference because, like I said, you're already doing 50 miles. So an extra half mile, especially if it's an extra half mile in both directions, dude, that's a huge difference. So, I feel your pain. All right. Continue.
Yeah. And I was hurting bad, and I was like, great. And it wasn't even marked. So if you're trying to do this, listeners at home, if you're trying to do this, I don't even know what mile it's around. It's got to be around mile at least mile 32-ish, maybe 35. I wasn't really paying, it all seemed the same, so I wasn't really checking the mileages that often. So it just kind of whatever it felt like in the moment. I was like, we're probably around mile 35 right now, but it's not obvious at all, and it was making me so mad because I was like, whatever. We got it. We got
a sufferfest. It's a sufferfest. Yeah. That's what it is.
That was really mentally hard on me because I was like, I already can't believe that I still have to go 20 more miles after this, and I just add an extra mile for what? For
that waterfall, though, that cool waterfall, right? Just kidding. I'm sure in that I'm sure it was not worth the extra effort in any capacity, especially at that point into the day and with the blisters. Was the elevation gain? So there's 4,000 feet throughout the 50 miles. Are there ever points where you actually notice the elevation gain, or was it all just very, your subtle elevation gain that just adds up over time?
I would say generally it's really subtle. I didn't feel like there were ever points where I was like, gotta climb this hill. This is gonna suck because I have to climb this hill now. It wasn't really ever like that. There were definitely points where you had to go uphill, downhill. Sure. But for the most part, it was kind of just a nice mix between the both, a lot of flat. So then you don't really notice it as much. I feel like when there's not deliberate mountains that you have to climb.
Yep, absolutely. Any animals back there that you noticed throughout the trip, or just the usual
Ooh.
suspects?
Mainly, okay, towards the end we saw some beavers, but that was like it.
Hmm.
And we've seen beavers before, once in like Avalanche Lake, and then here, but we don't see beavers that often, so that was kind of cool. But kind of at that point, I didn't really care because it was kind of towards the end that we saw them, and I was like, whatever, dude. These beavers are the reason I'm getting my feet soaked in this beaver dam right now, so I don't care.
Yeah, good point. Good point. I feel like tourists, like even at the end of a long day in the high peaks, when you eventually get to a point where it's like, look at all these amazing mountains all around me. Cool, I'm done. I'm mentally checked out. I'd like to be home now. Like I get it. I've been around them. It's cool, but right now it's lost on me. It's lost on me.
Exactly. I think at that point too, I was trying to like zone out. I was just trying to get through it in whatever way I could. So like if I kind of don't like we didn't see any people. We saw like maybe 6 people the entire time. And like not many backpackers. I think there were a lot of day hikers that were like coming from like different side trails. So it kind of was like isolating in a way. It was like you're spending so many hours by yourself. Like obviously I had my dad's there, but like I was hiking in front and then we'd get like a little separated. He stops to take a picture and now I'm like a minute ahead or so. So it was kind of a mental battle in that way.
I was just going to ask, what was your conversation like, or was it a lot of kind of silence? You're both just kind of in your own heads, in your own world, hiking for the majority of the time.
Yeah, usually we kind of I wouldn't say hike separately because we're definitely still hiking together, but I do like we kind of do our own thing in a way. Like I like the quiet, and I don't. There's not many places where you can be in the quiet the way you are quiet in the mountains. Like especially like the only sound you can hear is like your heart beating and your feet on the ground. Like that's just like a different feeling entirely, and I love it. It does to kind of drive me crazy after that many hours, but then you just have a conversation with your dad. Then you just like, I'm bored.
Yeah. Start talking about what you're going to get to eat once you're done.
Mm-hmm.
And oh man, how good would it be to have some pizza right now? Like imagine if someone could helicopter in some pizza right now, what would you get? And you start talking about that. And then all of a sudden, oh, look, a half mile went by. Nice. Okay. What can we talk about next? Yeah, totally. All right, cool. Well, you're at this point, you're probably about 3/4 of the way done through the trail, I'd imagine, in terms of our story. At what point into the day did you start to see the light at the end of the tunnel? There must have been some moment where it was like, oh, okay. And then you get that little pep in your step.
Okay. I have to be completely honest. I didn't get this feeling. Like, I tried to put off this feeling because I knew I was going to get it eventually, because like that eventually happens when you're hiking. I did not want this to happen when I was at like 20 miles out or something. I didn't start feeling like I was there until maybe like a half a mile's left.
Okay,
Because
sure.
even with like, I don't know how to describe it. Even with like 5 miles left, it felt like so far. It felt like I'm never going to get, like, I know I'm going to eventually, but it doesn't feel like I'm going to because of how far 5 miles seems right now.
Oh,
even
yeah.
3 miles, that just seems so unfathomably far to do right now. So like I just had to just really push through, and I didn't let myself get a pep in my step until like I thought that maybe I could see buildings through the trees.
Okay.
That
Well,
close. Then if I was like, I think that was kind of the key to it that day too, because if I started like thinking that I was close with like 10 miles left, even 8 miles left, then it was going to be just like a rough ending for me. Like,
yeah,
I've
that's a great
experienced
strategy.
that before.
Sure. That makes perfect sense. It's a very, very, very good strategy to deploy, because yes, when you start to think about it, that in terms of 50 miles, if you have 5 miles left, it could feel like you're at the end, but man, to walk 5 miles is, even walking 1 mile, you're still, especially when your feet are just like, chop me off, get them off of my body. At that point, 5 miles is an eternity. It might as well be 50 miles. Even
Exactly.
even 3 or 4 miles might as well be 50 miles. But all right, so you took about halfway or about a half a mile left to start to feel like you were almost done. Now, what was going through your head at that point when you finally crossed that threshold and you could start to let yourself know that I'm almost there? I've almost made it.
I feel like, okay, it wasn't necessarily even in the moment trying to relive it in my head. I don't remember it being like a super like glorious moment. I feel like when I got there, I was like, thank God it's over. Like,
Yep.
it's finally over. Like, I'm like, it wasn't like sometimes like when I do the bob or like when I did like the Great Range Traverse or something like that, even hikes in the winter, I just feel like so like happy. Like I just did that, like let's go. I'm like records broken, just did it. Peaks are bagged. This just felt like I just spent 17 hours walking through the woods and now it's over. Like that's all I got out of it.
Yep. I walked
So it
through
was
the
kind
woods
of
for
like
17
sad.
hours and I'm back at the car. That's pretty much what you're
Yeah,
feeling like.
I'm back exactly where I started. Not much has changed except for the fact that now I want to die. Like,
Yep. I know the feeling. And you have a few more blisters than you had 17 hours ago.
oh yeah, that was rough.
So then as you got back, so as you guys finished, so you're clearly once you got back to the car, then what went through your head? You're done. Now what's like the first thing you started thinking about?
Oh, that I wanted to go to sleep like really bad. Like I really needed a nap. Like I don't know. I was really tired for some reason. Well, for some reason, I don't know. I know why. But I wasn't like I tend not to get really hungry like right after a hike. Like I get hungry on trail obviously, but like I don't know, like the transition from hiking to like back to normal life, like I just don't really have that big of an appetite. So the first thing I really wanted was to go to sleep. But the first thing I actually did was take off my shoes because they hurt so bad. And I don't think it was the actual shoes that were hurting, it was my actual feet. My shoes never fail me. They're foolproof, but yeah.
And how was your dad feeling at that moment? And how did he do compared to how you did? We'll say physically and mentally, from your perspective at least. Although I'm sure you guys obviously talked about it.
Yeah, I don't want to say too much on his end, but I know that he was like, oh, I do know something actually. I remembered. Towards the end for him, he was having like this like calf cramp thing going on. I don't know what exactly was happening. All I know was that his words were like he started doing like this like ultra marathon or like run jump thing where you like hike by like jumping slash lunging so that you don't have to put like strain on your muscles on your legs. I didn't actually see him do this in person, so this is kind of just like what I've seen other people do. But so I know he was not physically loving it at that point, but he was definitely, we were both going pretty fast still. Like we weren't like going that slow, even though we were in pain.
That's good. That's good. So as you got back to the trailhead, the day's over. You guys have made it. Are you getting in the car to drive all the way back to Buffalo? I think that's where you live, right? Buffalo. Or were you guys still staying up here? Like, did he have to get back in the car and now drive you guys home?
That
I know
was
he's
the
done that in the
plan.
past. I know he's done that in the past after these long days.
Yeah, that is what we usually do, and that was the plan at the point. I did ask him, like, when we were done, I was like, are we going all the way home today? And he was like, yeah. But we did end up calling my grandma who lives in Syracuse, and we were like, can we sleep at your house? Which we did do that. We did that after the LP9 or Ultra, and we do that sometimes every once in a while when it's, like, kind of late, and we'd be getting home, like, at, like, 3 a.m., so there's not really a point in that when you're going to sleep. So we did end up going. That takes like 2 hours off the drive, so it's still a pretty lengthy drive, but yeah, it was better to sleep there.
That's good. I commend him because I tell you, even after a day in the high peaks, having to drive from Keene to Lake Placid, I don't know how people get in the car and drive long distances after massive days in the mountains. It's impressive, but cool. So rank it from 0 to 10. What is your score for the Cranberry Lake 50?
If 10 was like the best thing that I've ever done in my entire life, I'd probably give it like a 6.
Oh, it's higher than I would have expected. Higher than I would
Or
have
maybe
expected.
like
You're just being nice.
Probably higher if I was to go back and do it again, which I don't plan on doing. But if I was, I would do things differently. Like I definitely would save myself some pain the second time around, and then it probably would rank higher. Because in reality, it wasn't terrible. It was just boring. Like it was just like there's nothing fun about it. Like there's I don't know why people would do this.
Mm-hmm.
I
It's
don't know why
excessive, right? Excessive is the word.
I don't know why people would want to do this in general, but because there's nothing fun about it, especially as we were hiking, I was like, if people actually do backpack this, I genuinely don't know why.
Okay.
Doing it in one day is obviously you can do whatever you want, but backpacking it was so buggy that every time we stopped for 20 seconds, you're getting swarmed by bugs, and then the trail isn't anything to look at. Sometimes it is, but it hardly ever sees the lake. You see the lake sometimes. You're mostly just looking at swamps and trees.
All right.
So oh gosh.
Well, this is good though. This is good intel because maybe I won't make this a priority this summer. Now that we've had this conversation, it's like maybe eventually I'll get to it. But I've been on my board up here, my list for multiple years now. Cranberry Lake 50. Just haven't gotten to it.
Yeah.
I just haven't, because I'm gonna backpack it. So it's there's so much planning to do. You got to get time, the days. And it's oh, well, maybe I'll just go do something else. So I appreciate the honesty, but this has been a fun story. It's been fun hearing about this. And I kind of had an idea that that's how it was going to be because I've heard all about this trail from plenty of other people who have had pretty much similar experiences in terms of the underwhelming qualities of the Cranberry Lake 50. But again, any day in the woods is better than no day in the woods. Any day in the ADK is better than no day. And every day is a different adventure. So who knows what it brings, but very cool. Well, awesome. It's been great chatting with you. We'll start to wrap things up. You are an impressive girl. You've done some amazing things in the mountains. Things that I will be shocked if I ever even come close to touching. And you're always doing these massive days. So 52 miles, 4,000 feet of gain one day. How many items on the Northeast Ultra 50 have you done now? Or sorry, not the Northeast Ultra 8 have you done now?
I've done, with the 50, I've done 5 out of 8 of them.
Okay, cool.
I have 3 more to go.
Which are what?
I have to do the Presidential Traverse, the Tectonic Crest Traverse, and the Mahoosuc Traverse, which are all kind of not really easy for us to do, from Buffalo.
Sure.
Because they're all kind of out even further in Vermont and New Hampshire and even Maine. So those take a lot more planning and time set aside, not just a weekend that we can drive up there. So that's why they're the last ones, and they might not get done as quickly as the other ones.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Now, you said a few minutes ago that if you were to do it again, you would do a couple things differently. Real quick, what are those things you would do differently for the listeners?
Okay. Well, okay, I brought more than one pair of socks. I brought at least 3 pairs of socks. But I didn't I did change my socks at the halfway mark, but I didn't change them as much as I should have been. I should have changed them more, at least because I had them, so I should have just used them. And then I could have saved myself probably a lot of the after pain. I don't really know if this could have been prevented, but my toes are still even today, they're really beat up. They're never gonna be the same probably after this hike, because I just ignored my feet so much and I just tried to push through the pain as much as possible, which apparently I'm really good at. But it could have, if I was to go back, I wouldn't do that to the extent that I did, because it was unnecessary.
All right, sure. Now, for anyone who's ever seen Forrest Gump, as soon as Forrest Gump gets to Vietnam, Lieutenant Dan tells them to take care of their feet. Most important thing, every time they stop, change your socks. So it's funny. It's a line that my dad reminds me of all the time when he finds out I'm going hiking. He'll say, you change your socks every time you stop. He's quoting the movie, but it's funny how it's actually a very accurate and a very insightful piece of wisdom to impart. Very cool. So what adventures, as we wrap things up here, what adventures do you have eyeballing for the rest of the summer?
Okay, so we're going to try and do one more of the Northeast Ultra 8 this summer. When we're going up to my uncle's cabin in Maine, so we are a little bit closer to those mountains, and we usually can get one like done in the time that we're visiting. And another hike that I don't know if it's going to happen or not, because my dad doesn't really want to do it, as I have to kind of persuade him the same way I persuaded him on the Bob Marshall, is the Santonies and the Sewards in 24 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of been on my list for a long time. And it's kind of like if you combined, in my mind, it's like if you combined the Cranberry Lake 50 and the Bob, because it has like the long mileage and like the Sufferfest along with like the peak bagging. But I don't know. It's just like, so I really want to do it. So
Well, there you go. People do it.
Maybe in like September or something.
People do it. So it is possible, certainly. Very cool. So I'll start to wrap things up with the questions, and I've asked you this before, but we'll ask you them again, these final questions here on the summit sessions. What's one thing that's in your backpack that you always have with you when you're hiking that you just have to have with you that's unique to you?
I'd say it's probably food related, but it's going to be different than last time because I've grown as a person. But it's probably going to be this. We've adopted pierogies as our new thing after listening to Katie Rhodes, because I love pierogies and I never thought of that. And I will eat them no matter like how much I don't want to eat food on the trail. Like no matter how unappetizing everything is, I'll always eat a pierogi.
Sure.
So those are always in there, along with like Jolly Ranchers. They keep you going, and like throughout the miles, they make the time pass a little bit faster.
Yeah, they take like 16 hours to eat to eat one. Very cool. That makes perfect sense. Great job. Okay, so now next question. In your opinion, what do you think makes the Adirondacks a unique place? You and your dad keep coming up here over and over and over again. What is so attractive about this place to you?
I would say probably just like how accessible they are to people who like in such like a wide, like no matter like where you live, if you can live so far away, so many people can access these mountains just for free. They could come up here and like, I don't know, just you can do so. I would say your own backyard, even though it's like not really my backyard, but like, I don't know. It's just like the amount of like challenges that are available. It's just like unique to just the Adirondacks. Like it's been said that, it's like a known thing that like the Adirondacks have like the most like hiking challenges out there, but that's what I love. So then that's why I love it.
That's great. I applaud you for that, because I also think that's what makes this a unique place is having, I said it before in different podcasts, like this whole hiking challenge thing, it is the Adirondack brand and I freaking love it. Obviously I have one that I run myself that I created, but it's because I just think that it is this place's brand and I think it's cool. And for people like yourself, people like myself, they like the physical aspect of the mountains. Like that is really what draws us to it, is the pushing ourselves physically and the huffing and the puffing. It's very, very attractive to my type of personality. So I second that. And a final question. Why do you hike? Why do you push yourself? Why do you do these massive days? No one's making you do it. I guarantee your friends aren't doing it. What is it about, pushing yourself in the mountains that keeps you coming back for more?
Okay, so I don't have a good answer for this, because my dad and I, when we were I was talking to him about the podcast and he knew that you were going to ask me this. So we were talking about it and he said that we both try not to think about that, because if we think too hard about why, then we might not hike. Mm-hmm. Because like we don't have a good reason like why. We just know that like we want to, and that we have like the urge to, no matter like what, like no, even if it's raining, even if it's like negative 27 degrees, like no matter what, we're going to want to go like through the weekend. Like I'm never going to say, no, I don't want to go hiking this weekend. So, and I guess because, I don't know, like it just challenges me in a way that I don't get from anything else. Like that, like the endorphins and just everything the environment. You don't get that by playing like school sports. You don't get to just hike 50 miles by playing, I don't know. And I don't know how to, I try to tell people this at school, and I don't know, I try to tell people, describe it, how it's just like so different than anything you can get just like living your normal life. Like it's just so out there.
I would say based on that answer that your why is because you can. And I think that's exactly it. You can go do these things. So let's go do them. Let's go have the adventure because we can. There's so many people who would love to be able to go do these things and have these adventures that just can't. So you can. So great. Don't take that for granted. And, that's really seems to be what keeps you out there. So fantastic. Well, Eleena, where could people find you online?
I'm on Instagram at Eleena_adventures. And you can follow me there. That's pretty much like the only place that I ever like post anything or basically do anything.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much for coming back on the 46 of 46 podcast. We'll wrap things up right there. Thank you to everyone for listening to this episode of the Summit Sessions. Head over to 46outdoors.com to find out more about the podcast, more about what I can offer you, from an ebook about how to climb the 46 high peaks to training programs to get yourself ready to climb the high peaks, guided hikes, and much more. Head over to 46outdoors.com. Remember to check back on Fridays for new mountains, new stories, new guests, and new episodes right here on the 46 of 46 podcast. That will do it. Remember to always leave no trace, do the rock walk, and if you carry it in, carry it out. See you on the trails, everybody.